It's time for the Jim and Terry Show.
This could be the last throw of the dice. Have you got that Nelson touch? Oh, the guilt that the earnest love to feel. For 10 generations you cannot steal. You can't catch a thief like that. So you whip his children instead. And a crowded mind in your crowded head. Once you were alive, but soon you'll be dead. Only the rain will wash you clean. So you whip his children instead. So who judges man's sincerity? Be penitent and genuflex if you please. Matthew, Mark, and Luke and John. Oh, open the gate and you'll be gone.
The Jim and Terry Show coming to you as a solo podcast for the next few episodes. Coming to you from the Hobbit Hole Studio in Bobcaygeon, where an empty chair awaits my good friend Jim, who's enjoying some fun in the sun, the Mexican sun. Hope you're safe, Jim. Hope you're not listening. But if you are, no, I got nothing. Yeah, miss you, my friend, and I am envious of your fun in the sun. Getting to the starting of this podcast, the opening song is called Becoming Fragile, which is a lyrical expose by Keith. That's his guitar with that reverse gate effect on it, and the arrangement is from yours truly. What I love is the British isms that always emerge. That Nelson touch is a reference to Admiral Nelson, who you may know defeated the French and Spanish armadas gathered by Napoleon in the famous Battle of Trafalgar. And that's what he's known for. Admiral Nelson. Do you have that Nelson touch, the ability to turn adversity into something positive? Well, that's what that song is all about. And yet there's the allusion in some of the lyrics to faith as well, and wondering whether we have, and this is a question, become too fragile. Becoming fragile is maybe a nice sentiment. Maybe it's about being vulnerable and, risk-taking perhaps. And that's a good thing. Good thing to open up your life is to become vulnerable And when you risk take that, you don't know. It's like rolling the dice, and you're never sure what the number is that's going to come up. And the negative side of it is that you become too much so, becoming too fragile, that the slightest adversity will break your character, break your life circumstances, make you a victim of circumstance rather than overcoming and resilient. You become something brittle and easily destroyed through the adversities of life, whether it's the economic changes that happen through uncertainty, rising interest rates, loans, etc. These things can take the wind out of our sails and maybe become an impediment towards living a meaningful and productive life. When the winds of change blow around us and we are unable to adapt, that becomes a concern. I'm thinking of perhaps the way that we have isolated ourselves. COVID has created some of that stuff. I'm not sure that we are entirely out of the woods with that infectious virus. However, I am sure that there are scientific endeavors to make sure that we are able to overcome. And that is where I put my trust, is in the science. And yet I know that there are those who find that science is something that they do not trust, that government as institutions, schools as institutions, are things that they do not trust either. And when you become so convinced that there is nothing out there to trust in terms of institutions or the systems in life, then it becomes easy to become bitter and to spend a lot of energy in that bitterness, wallowing at the things that are perceived as injustices. And I'm thinking, given that this is the anniversary of the Ottawa protest, that perhaps some of that sentiment is wrapped up in that. I would use the word misguided with some of this stuff. And the only reason I would use that term is because I'm convinced that we go to our wells, whatever wells we tend to get our social media information from, what we choose to believe is sourced in social media most of the time these days. I'm still part of the legacy media tradition where I believe that reporters are worth their salaries and stories have to be vetted, sources have to be noted, and you've got to do your due diligence, that journalism is a worthy school of learning and that we owe a lot to journalists, especially investigative reporters, all the way from, I'm thinking of the Watergate scandal and how the reporters for the Washington Post dug and documented that whole fiasco that ended up toppling the Nixon administration. And I'm wondering, along those ways, why, since the parallels are obvious between Trump and Nixon, why Trump has not had his Watergate moment. There were threats of the Knights of the Long Knives where Trump aides threatened to resign, just like Nixon's administration threatened to resign. And only with that threat did Nixon finally say he's going to resign himself. Trump did not, and fought tooth and nail. Some of the images I have in my mind is a cartoon of Trump being dragged out of the White House, clenching, and his fingernails are across the desk in the Oval Office, and you see his fingernails with the grooves cut like a raptor claw on the top of the desk. They are trying to remove him from office. And that's a great image for what happened. I have purchased a copy of the January 6th Commission's book, and it is a lot of reading, but I like it in print because it gives me a chance to go over the details verbatim. I loved the telecast on television, primetime, often in the evenings or afternoons of the January 6th Commission's findings. But I found that the moments came and went, and although they were shocking when they appeared on screen and in the live stream of the media covering these commission reports, the book is in black and white. It's the whole thing is there. The ugliness of it all is there in black and white. And sometimes we need to see life as black and white and become less bitter, less victimized, and call the shots for what they are. There's a lot of nastiness out there. Become aware of it, not become too vulnerable. Bye-bye for now.